I just want to say you did a very good job. So good job. It's that thing where you're actually kind of smart. Things you say make you sound dumb.
Yeah, we both do that.
What's that called?
Nope.
Yeah, but you're a little different, Dad.
Stop saying sure! Oh, it drives me crazy!
Are you seeing clear? Are you seeing clear?
I think most people just ignore the tough question. This isn't Minecraft. This is real life.
You are hilarious.
That was not the dog, Dad. That was you.
Yeah, to solve this, we have to completely ignore the main problem.
That makes literally no sense to me. I just want to die.
And that, my friend, is one of my favorite things about you. Hey, welcome to Renaissance Radio. It's Jeremy. I'm doing something a little bit new today. It's going to be similar to the episode where I recorded at the Roost at Cocosing River Outfitters, where I just kind of did a state of the Renaissance, some of the updates that are coming. So thanks for listening in. We're going to have a regular guest segments on Mondays. Then we've got Disruptated with Harley on Wednesdays. I may drop a Friday episode or two of something like this. For those of you that are a little bit into process improvement and techie type stuff mixed with behavior modification and all that behavioral stuff, this might be a cool thing for you. I'm recording, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm recording on the Fujifilm X-T30, which is a pretty accessible mirrorless camera with a kit lens, and something I grabbed a little while back and have really enjoyed it. The mini or micro, this is not a guide for a shopping list. I'm just giving you an idea. Whatever HDMI is coming out of that thing, it's got continuous focus too, which is kind of nice. So I can move in and out. That's new to me. And it's running on a capture card that allows me to record directly into the Mac. And so I thought today I would talk a little bit about process. I've got a whole bunch of projects that I'm not really juggling because I really only have one thing in the air at a time. But there's a lot going on, so I thought I would chat about some of that today. One of which is kind of the variety of Renaissance Radio. I'm really excited that now that some of the technical things are beginning to take hold, I'm really pumped that I've got a system now for packing up my gear and for recording. I'm beginning to get better at my technique and my listening and things like that. I'm long ways to go, but I'm getting better. But the technical process of getting a show out is something that I've just labored over day in and day out for a little while on the weekends. And I think I'm getting there, which is kind of cool, which means I can just spot up. I've got a kit and I bought the case and all that stuff, and I can just kind of spot up. Everything's pre-packed and I can start recording. And so what normally takes a really long time in the early days is now starting to take less and less time. Same thing with post-production. I'm getting to a point where I can, produce a show a little bit quicker, although it's not perfect. A lot of you messaged me and said, hey, on Manti Cakes, you cut off the end. That's true. I did cut off like the last goodbye. You guys are great. Kind of nicety side of things, but you didn't miss much there. And that was a great episode. I've really been getting good feedback there from that. And it's pretty cool. I'm excited about this week's episode Monday that came out with Corey Hubble. That's going to be exciting. And of course the Disruptated issues episodes with Harley is pretty cool. But as far as updates go, that variety piece is something that I'm really excited about. I love the idea of popping up and interviewing in the field on some of these topical things. I love the guests, the Renaissance folks that I've been meeting with, people that are just really passionate about their craft, the creatives, the creative artists, the craftsmen, the techies, and the thinkers. I've got a really cool lineup of guests coming down the pipe, which is going to be really cool. A really cool group that's going to be really cool. That's a very good descriptive summary. But yeah, so I'm excited about that. As far as the topics go, I think I already covered it there. So I'm checking a note here, some things that I jotted down that I wanted to get out. On the street stuff, with kids, there was a little side episode that I recorded with the man's little dude, and people were just freaking out about how fun that was. So I'm going to do some of those. And then I also, folks have shown legitimate care and concern, like, hey, are you doing too much here? What's been kind of cool about this project with the Renaissance Agency is it just has really helped me think better in the area of putting a show together. And it's really similar to like production at my day job. It's really helped me understand preparation better. It's helped me understand working with others, scheduling, setting expectations and boundaries. And so, no, it's not happening at the expense of anything with my day job, fully committed to my day job. It's not happening at the expense of with my family. So we're still doing some amazing things together. I had a daddy date yesterday. We went to counseling, my wife and I, with some dear friends. And and then we started demo in the kitchen, which has been really cool. The kitchen project, that's something that, oh my goodness, that is so exciting to me. I've never run a project that large when it comes to like construction. The difficulty I've had is the same difficulty with the show in the early days, which is now still, but is I know what to do and I know how to find answers when I don't know. But the problem I run into is it's really hard without experience to properly estimate what's going to cost the most time and what's going to cause the most surprises and things like that. And so that's the tough part. And so what I've kind of taken on with the approach of the kitchen that we're doing is, number one, making sure that the family's comfortable, making sure that they're able to function, that it's not too disruptive there. And number two is I've been really, really focused on making sure that whatever I take on in the moment, just a really good plan, but whatever I take on in the moment, because there's random like couple hours that I have available to work, I make sure that I can have that cleaned up in the allotted amount of time. In other words, put back whole again, and then that the next project can be prepped in that amount of time. So that's been super helpful. So for example, the other day I was like, man, I can't have dust and this 50, 60-year-old whatever's in the walls coming out to the rest of the family. So I went to the store, I bought everything I needed to get the work zone ready. And then the next unit of time that I had available with the family, we taped everything up. A lot of you are following on Instagram. We taped everything up and got the plastic up so that it wouldn't make a mess. And I covered things that were important and that sort of thing. Then we moved everything out of there into the larger of the two living rooms. And that has become a dining, living, kitchen, right? Which fortunately my wife enjoys lots of extra, not extra, but she really utilizes things like she has 2 instant pots and an air fryer and, electric skillet and, all that stuff that accompanies a kitchen for some. And she's got a mixer and all that stuff. And so she's been able to use those things while we're out on the long 10-foot walnut butcher block table. And then additionally, we rented water, fresh water. Costco's sending it out, and it's hot water, cold water type thing. So like it's running, it's functional, it's fine. But then I started doing a demo yesterday, and this was the first time I've ever done it this way. Instead of like, how far can I get today? I just went, I'm going to rip this wall out, and I'm going to clean it up, and then I'm going to prep the workstation for the next job. And as it always does, that job took more energy than I expected. But there was daylight at the end because I was like, all I got to do is bag up all this drywall, sweep, and wipe it down. And then I need to, set up the table and make sure all the tools are out for the next thing. So when I walk in there next time, the whole area is completely clean and it's ready to go for the next part of the project. And that's been so like helpful in life in general for me over this last year. And part of why I've seen these gains is like for my day job, sometimes I'm leading others and sometimes I'm doing work myself that's my own responsibility and reward. And I have my bags already packed to do all that stuff. Like I have a bag ready to go when it's time to go lead or I go to a new market and meet guys and, we help encourage them and give them resources and set expectations. That bag, like I already know what I need. It's actually already packed. It's ready to go. When I go out on my own and I need to maybe do some inspections or do some work that way, that little Carhartt bag is packed too. And so I know it sounds really silly to have like 3 or 4 bags packed, but that's kind of how I've managed this kind of Renaissance mindset, is just making sure that everything's packed and ready to go. So I do the same thing here. I'm going to record this episode. I'm going to make sure that all the files I clean up. I make sure all the files are exactly where they need to be. I make sure my desk is cleaned for tomorrow's workday. I make sure everything's good to go. And then I look ahead to the next task and say, okay, what do I know that I'm going to need? And I put that stuff out. So that's been like wildly helpful to me. That whole philosophy has been crazy helpful. When people say like, well, how are you juggling all this stuff? I think the key for me has been, and I may overdo it and there may be times of correction, but I think the key for me has been, just don't juggle. Like just do one thing at a time and finish what you're doing and prepare for the next thing. This is like every old guy, every awesome wise sage, every woman, any person that's like good at this sort of thing. It's like they learn that when they're like 15. And I'm 36 and I'm just now kind of starting to learn it. But it's been great. It's been excellent because it allows me to throw myself into what I'm doing, throw myself into the interview. And like I said, like if I'm not focused on all this production when I have a guest out because I've got my gear set up, it's ready to go. I know I have everything and I'm prepared. Whether I record now or in 2 weeks, I know that everything's where it's supposed to be. And so that's been wildly, wildly helpful. With Renaissance, some of my personal projects that I'm kind of doing like as an artist within, as a consultant, thinker, techie, in those 4 categories, craftsman within Renaissance, not as the owner, but as the person who's also participating. I have my own projects that I want to do. They're not on the schedule yet, but I want to work some of those out. One of the things is there's a product line called Missima Orawa, and I have this whole vision for products that are wildly thoughtful, that use elements and colors and the feeling of the Midwest, which is walnut and cedar for me, oak, things like that. but kind of has some of that inspiration from the East of kind of mastery and simplicity and smaller portions and things like that. And so I have a product line, whole vision for that, color scheme, vibe, feel, kind of character of the line. But one of the things that's going to come from that, and I'm not going to tease that too much, it's going to be awesome and expensive and great. I'm going to make things that I just want to own or be in the world for myself. But one of the things that's going to come ahead of that is I have a full prototype line that I'm working on, which is basically just it needs done, not done right type stuff that's beautiful, but I don't need the exotic woods. Not that domestic hardwoods are exotic woods, but I don't need to go all out with literally everything that I do. So there's a prototype line that's got a color scheme of kind of birch plywood and off-white paper, lead, that sort of thing, that's more sketched. And I'm really excited about that. And I think that's going to come out. I haven't designed it yet, but I've got kind of a sense of it. I'm hoping to get together with some apparel folks to say, hey, here's the material that I want. Here's the conditions of what I'm making. And then from a design perspective, I've got some cool elements I'm working on. So it's basically the sketch version of my Missimo, like high-end line that I want to do, designer line for everything. And I think that's going to be neat. I think that's going to be really cool to be released that. Those will be more affordable and stuff. And it's just stuff that I want to make for myself. Additionally, I've got some really cool guests coming up that are craftsmen. There's a craftsman that's like super pumped. His email back was like so excited to get together, who literally has a shop that you can just do projects with. So you'll want to tune in for that one. Griffin Hollow Studios. That's going to be somebody that you as an artist, craftsman, techie, or thinker can partner with to have things made or make yourself and rent the space. So that's going to be a really cool resource to add to our Renaissance community. I already talked to Corey about it. He's like, oh my gosh, I want to have things made. I want to do it. I want to design my own thing. So there's so much happening there. Of course, Blonde Robin and the location out at Kokosing River Outfitters. We've also got some musicians that I'm going to be speaking with that have incredible giftedness, some limitations, but have worked through it in really amazing ways. I've got a band coming in that we're getting ready to meet with. It's just been through scheduling. Scheduling has been the biggest thing because I'm not available during the week primarily. And so for this, it's been great. And Shannon, I had Shannon to the team. She's the administrative assistant. We call her guest services. Has been really cool and kind of culling. There's people that are interested, but maybe not a great fit for the show. And so she's been great at kind of feeling that out, helping with scheduling and things like that. So it's crazy. It's been wild. Stacks and stats and notebooks and cards and little thoughts here and there, but it's starting to come together kind of clearly for me. I know it may sound vague to you and not clear, but you'll see it as it comes. But adding this new capability, like being able to do this DSLR, for example, recording is really cool. Like it's neat to be able to do that. I'm having huge issues with space management. I'm watching the ticker right now. I'm at 12 minutes, 30 seconds. I'm at 1 gigabyte. So I got to figure that out because I can't just be buying huge rated servers for these sort of things. I don't want to be wasteful also, in terms of storage space and cost. So I'm going to figure that out. But here I am. Like I just hit the record button. I plugged a couple things in and I'm ready to go. The ability to stream is just like a really neat ability to do. It's a new thing that we can do now. So I wanted to talk today a little bit about those things I mentioned earlier. Maybe throw some challenges out your way. I'm doing this as a friend, as a peer. Maybe I'm operating at a higher level than you are right now, or maybe I'm operating at a lower level than you are right now. But I just wanted to remind, it's not about that. It's not a contest there. I just wanted to remind you of some pretty cool principles and some tools that maybe you can use if you're stuck. These aren't the only way to do it. Just some things that I kind of jotted down and I was thinking about. One cool thing about shopping. How's that for a transition? One cool thing about shopping is, I think, for me, is learning, first of all, identifying who is doing it best. So that's really fun for me, is finding out who in the space is actually legitimately doing the best thing. So that could be microphones, headphones, gear, literally like the top line, not the most expensive, but the ones who are like, have that mindset of like excellence, finding out who does the thing the best, and then finding out the key attributes of that. And then you can then go from there to look at market, kind of like market viability. So you find the best one and it happens to be 40,000 times, 40,000x cost, right? It's a $1.2 million consultation with a CEO is the best. But then, you look at it and you go, okay, the attributes that make this great that people are consistently talking about, I can get a much lesser version of that. And maybe I won't get quite the same outcome, but you know exactly what you're working with. It's the same thing with headphones, right? Or microphones. A microphone would be a great example. This microphone right here is $100 for the mic. It's $39 for the stand. And then I get good cables, because you hear on a lot of shows, you hear that crackling. And that's from a poorly shielded cable. And if you could see right now, there's cables all over, like running over top of each other. And those things would be crackling like crazy if I didn't buy the expensive ones. So the cable's like $50. Once I identified what the absolute best option was for podcasting, I realized that the gap between the Rode Pod mic and the very, very best was like pretty substantial in cost. Like, it was wild, but the gap in quality didn't merit that cost difference. So I got this one. And so I've been happier with these. I got another mic that I've been using, and it just caused me some issues. It's a better mic technically, but it's caused me some issues, some echoes and things, just user error probably. And so having this microphone was better, but that process of getting down to like what the best thing is really, really helpful, even if you're not in the market or shopping for things, because you at least know what contributes to success. So you can do this similarly in terms of process improvement in your own life. You don't want to search, how do I stay organized necessarily, right? Because people are just going to sell you all sorts of things. But if you're struggling with your memory or organization, go find people who do the parts of that the best, or like look at people who, sometimes the people who are best at it aren't the best at explaining it. You know what I mean? So you might go to somebody and you say, hey, you're super organized. How do you do it? And then you find out they're like manic. They're like, you know what I mean? Like they're not capable of teaching you how they do it. They just do it. They're just wired that way. So keep searching. Find the people who do it best. Find the bullet points of the things that are vital and important to them, and then research that terminology. So, for example, Warren Buffett, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk is different, but the first two guys, I've heard them talk about decision fatigue. That you get a certain number of firing synapses. I brought this up on the show. You get a certain number of synapses, and then you start to get that foggy feeling because your brain is like, I need rest. I need to rejuvenate. Well, you know that that's true, but the application to Warren Buffett is that he never changes his clothes and his routine. He's in the same car every day. And you may not be wired that way, but now you know the search term. You can search ways to reduce the number of decisions each day. So he got you started. You may be able to take that search terminology instead of doing everything Warren Buffett does, because he doesn't have it all figured out, right? He's made a ton of money and he's continued to make a ton of money, but maybe making a ton of money isn't your thing. Like maybe that's not what you're pumped about, right? So you feel that way. Warren Buffett helped you identify why you feel that way, but he may not be the one that has a solution that you're looking for. So now you have the search term that you can kind of lock onto. How do I reduce the number of decisions I make every day? One way would be to just like do an audit, a journal of the things you do, and try to automate those decisions every day. I'm going to hang my keys in the same place. I'm going to set up my outfits. I'm going to use my decision the day before instead of the day after. There's things like that. But there's kind of an infinite number of examples of someone who helps you identify the problem, but may not be the person for the solution. So that's something you can do while you're shopping, researching, learning, is go out and go, here's my problem. Who's got it, seems to be getting it figured out. And then what is the bullet point that they've learned, and then learn their application. But again, don't get super hooked on that. There's a couple books specifically in that area, staying organized and getting things off your plate. There's one called Getting Things Done. I think it's by Covey. And the premise of that book is basically that our brain is very, very good at remembering things. It constantly brings it up, but it's not organized. So what'll happen is you'll have maybe a vital, like a custody hearing, and it's super vital, and your brain keeps reminding you that you really need to work out. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, this is the most important thing. Or like reminds you got to circle back to that person to say, I didn't really mean that. Your brain is just looping through these decisions. And so his premise is, and his method is, every time you think of something like that, rather than sitting on it, you resolve it by writing it down. So you write it down and you say, there's a big bucket that you just write literally everything down chronologically as it happens. And his thing is that I'm 2/3 of the way through the book now, the way I'm explaining it. Like, I'm moving pretty fast. You should definitely read it. But his thinking is get it out of your head and onto paper to a trusted place. And then there's times where you're thinking about what you should do. There's times where you're sorting what you should do. And then there's times where you're doing what you should do. And so his thing is to recognize, hey, this is a moment where I have a lot on my plate and I'm thinking of what to do, but I'm not in a position where I can do it, and I'm not in a position where I could sort it. He wants you to journal everything and get it out of your head. Then when you're kind of chilling and maybe you're waiting at the doctor's office and you can't really do anything, but you've got 25 minutes, you can go in there and sort it. And you can say, here's things I need to do when I'm at home. You take that big list you made and you stuff it into the home bucket. Or maybe these are things I need to do when I'm at the office, and you put them in those buckets. Then when you get home, you check your list and you go, okay, here's my home list, and you do it. So his whole thing is get it out of your brain, sort it when you can, and do it when you can. And then he says anything that's going to take you less than 2 minutes, it doesn't matter what you're doing, just do it. You shouldn't put all this energy into putting into a list if you could just get it done in 2 minutes, because it'd take you more than 2 minutes to put it down and then sort it and then do it. So that's a book that would help out with that sort of thing. That's been really helpful to me as I go on this process. Like I said, this is kind of an open book on how things are going. I recognize personally that there was a whole segment of work, which is coordinating schedules, that I was not capable of managing. And so I've known this for years. I've always grabbed somebody for that. And so hiring Shannon was a huge deal for me to help manage that schedule, because it would have continued to creep into my personal and day job. So I said, nope, I'm going to hire that out. I created a form that she sends to everybody that basically informs them on the type of questions I'll be asking in the show. So the questions aren't like, hey, how are you? How are you doing? It's like, what's a project you want to definitely do in the next 12 months? What's your confidence level that you'll be able to get it done? And there's kind of, when were you at your best? You know, what were the situational components of being at your best? So it's kind of a tough questionnaire a little bit, takes some thought, and it just shows me that the person's invested in that kind of thinking. If I get a survey back and it's like, I don't know, then that's a great person to hang out with and talk to, but maybe not on the show, not interesting for you guys. Dropped my pen. So that's one thing. The other thing that I've been working on that's been really difficult is my calendar. So in terms of having everything in one place, I just want to have one calendar that like chills and I can go, man, I know what I have to do today. And that's an area of like non-failure. Like I cannot fail at my calendar. It has to be there. And so what I did was I set up some parameters. My calendar events always have a location 100% of the time. Even if it's a web conference call, I want to know where I'm taking that web conference call. And so that's what I've asked Shannon to do for me. I do it on my own as well. And sometimes my wife or Harley will kick in, events and invite me. Everybody invites me. But the point is, when you're generating a request for me, if you're on my team, there's always a location. There's always a web link. There's always context in the notes. There's a start and an end time, the invitees, and the title should be consistent. So the title is like, what we're doing and who it's with. So it'll be like, pipeline review - sales managers with our team. And that's always going to be the same. And then there's a location of where I need to be physically. And then it'll say web call on the top or phone call or something like that in the title as well. So creating those systems where we don't have to think about it, it's just a Mad Lib of filling in the gaps has been vital for me. And so I can kind of like at a glance, an hour before the event, 30 minutes before the event, maybe I got caught up in something real crazy. I'm not scrambling to figure out where I need to be. It's telling me. So that's been really challenging. That system has been really helpful, but technologically it's been challenging because my Renaissance servers are on Exchange. My work servers for my day job are on Google or G Suite, and my personal stuff's on iCloud. So Shannon's running the info at the renagency.com email. So she's running out of there as guest services. But I have basically like this intake of 3 different servers. And so I'm using Fantastical, and I went ahead and paid for the premium for the year for that. What it does really well is it allows you to use common language. And so, for example, I've struggled with my iCloud and my Gmail around time zones. So if I have a conference call or travel with someone in another time zone, it hasn't really gotten it right. There's been some problems there. And so with Fantastical, I wrote the other day, like web conference 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with name at location. I wrote it out as a sentence, which is weird. And it captured it all really well for me. And then I was able to add in those different calendars to there. So that's pretty cool. I would say specifically why I brought it up is if you're working off of different servers, a third-party solution like that's really nice. But we're also using at work, we're using HubSpot and Salesforce. We're also using Excel and iCloud services like Pages and Numbers. There's just a lot of software coordination. Obviously, as you're building it, and that's something that I'm helping to do to the best of my ability, is consolidate some of that so that it's all CRMs and stuff are all in one place. But you have to have a single source of truth when it comes to your time and that sort of thing, because otherwise you're just going to make mistakes. And so that's something I've had to really, really focus on. Creating reoccurring events is really nice because you can keep those parameters in there. And then, like, say you have office hours for your team and you can say, hey guys, you can show up anytime there's office hours there, you can show up and just jump into the web conference or send me an invite. That's been really, really helpful. The other thing is contacts. I'm still building that system. It's really important to me. I just can't. I talked to Corey about this in a separate episode, like kind of in a third bonus episode that we'll see when that fits in. But I just really struggle to answer unlisted numbers. I'm already in the process of doing something. I'm already in a discussion, or I'm on my way to somewhere, or I'm reading intentionally. I'm not really like sitting around hoping something happens ever, as you can see by my schedule. And so I'm kind of like, if I'm sitting and reading, I don't want to be taking phone calls. Now, I do though, because if someone calls me and I know who they are, I'm going to take the call, but I just don't take unknown numbers very often. So what that means is, especially when you're in an industry where you have customers, is you have to capture the information from the customer so that unknown numbers are probably solicitations 99% of the time. If you're doing that thing where you go, hey, text me your first name, and you just put Jerry in there, then you have to answer every phone call. But like, I was kind of arguing with somebody about this the other day, and I think they're right. You should answer your phone, no question. But I'm getting 100 phone calls and 95 of them are spam or scam. And I just don't run my life that way. I can't just be interrupted every 10 seconds. It's just not something I do or would allow me to be successful. And so what I do is I capture everybody's information that I can. And in the rare one-offs where I didn't capture it, maybe I made a mistake, or maybe, they didn't share it or something like that. When that happens, they always shoot a text or leave a voicemail. They just go, hey, this is Jenny. We talked the other day, and I go, oh my gosh, Jenny, so sorry I didn't answer. Could you send me your contact information? So what I use is that links profile. It has all my information, all my contact information, and it contextually has the proper information. So like, if I send you my day job one, you have my day job email, my phone number, the address to the office, how to make a payment. You have the right contact for a remedy or repair. You can request an update. It's all where it's supposed to be. If I meet you in a Renaissance context, I'll send you that, and it has the links to all of our social stuff, how to communicate, web forms, signing up, requesting a meeting. And so like, my side's covered. Where I struggle is centralizing. So like, Shannon's doing a pretty good job of this right now and getting better every day, because it's a new request from me, is just get their information. I even want a profile picture. I know that sounds ridiculous, but guys, with the amount of information that's coming into me and the failure rate of that, in other words, like, my failure rate has to be 0. I have to be able to be reached by anybody who's reaching out to me. But there's a 90% chance that it's a scam email or phone number, right? We have to figure out how I get your information. And so what I've done is I've created a Siri shortcut where I can just ask conversationally. This is kind of nerdy, but I go, remind me your name again. Okay, first name, last name, great. What's your phone number? Great. And it just is a little form. I tap a little Siri shortcut button, it pops up, ask me these questions. I go, do you mind if I take a quick picture of you real fast? Just so I remember. I've thousands of people in my phone. And they go, oh my gosh, my hair. And I go, this is no problem. I'm not publishing this. It's just for me. And they go, okay, fine. And I take a picture. Okay, sick. Now I create a contact card, but then it's got to go into Google and Exchange. But that process is really important to me, because now all of a sudden when Jenny calls, I know it's from my day job because of the note there that comes up, her picture comes up, and her name comes up. So that's been a vital process improvement that I've been focusing on lately. And that's just how you do, I'm just learning that's how you do more than other people do, is you make the processes automated and easy through extremely well thought out mapping, and then mixed with tools and resources that make it intuitive. It's that simple, but it's incredibly difficult. Especially what I've learned is, especially if I'm requesting that literally anybody change literally any behavior. I'm sitting in a room talking to myself, and I'm like coming down on the Earth's population as if I'm a father. I know this is ugly. The amount of times that I put 20 hours into something instead of video games, instead of eating bagels, the things that I'd like to be doing, the amount of times that I put tons and tons of work into something, and the bottleneck is somebody's like, I don't feel like it, is consistently high. Now, I've gotten better over time at just leaving those things at people's doorstep as a boundary. So what I do is I very quickly assess the situation. This is not a client. This is not a customer. This is not someone I'm reporting to or who's reporting to me. This is just a person I bump into. And they say, I really want to fix this thing. We have a quick discussion. I lay some tools on them, and then I forget about it. I go, here's what's next. Here's how you can reach me if you have questions. And here's what I would do if I were you. Awesome. I won't ask about it again. So by doing that, that's kept me sane in that area because I don't have to follow up. There's no responsibility on me. I've done what I can. And that's really, really helped me. But in the software category, for example, there's a project that I did for my day job where I did a huge tear sheet. I mean, just like tons of formulas on Excel and on numbers. I called in a favor. Actually, I want to meet with Tyler Law, who does this stuff at a really high level. I learned it enough to use it, and it went really well with the team. But it's hard because it's hard for all of us to change our behavior, especially when it's mandated. And so that's something I'm learning too, is how do you take a problem that someone's having, that they personally have requested help in the solution, but are resistant to the behaviors that it would need to change it. Now, what I've heard from a lot of people is you can't. You can't force someone to sleep, and you can't force someone to do something any longer than force is allowed. So like, or present. So when you're forcing someone to do something, as soon as you let up on that pressure, that force, people are going to do whatever they do. So like you can put a dog on a leash and never give them more than an inch, and you pull them by the neck, they're going to do what you say because you're stronger. But as soon as you let them off that leash, man, they're going to get out of there. And so, and people aren't dogs. People are amazing, humans created in the image of God. They're not inferior or superior. I'm not inferior or superior in that way. So it's just learning the behavioral, the customer experience side of those sort of changes. To me, that's very interesting. As I've gone through process improvement on the technology and behavioral side of like UI, now I'm switching over to kind of a CX kind of feel of like what moves people, which is interesting because as a storyteller, as somebody who has, in sort of like sales and persuasion and those sort of things and storytelling, I understand moving people. And then on this side over here, I've spent quite a bit of time in understanding resourcing people. And I think there's just this bridge between those two. I'm excited to connect those two of like helping people feel the compulsion to do what's in their best interest. And then also being humble myself and understanding that my solution may not be the best solution. But if we're communicating regularly and we're like really working it out actually, and we're doing lean startup type quick turns and iterations, it is what they want, right? Because you've been governed by their feedback and their input and their behaviors. It's just a matter of like, sometimes people just aren't there yet. And so in that case, that's a great example for me. Being dependable is foundational to everything I'm doing. And there's areas where if I don't have systems in place, I can't be dependable. I can't. And so I have just learned that learning how to schedule, I don't measure time like other people do. So learning how to schedule is not a good investment for me. I've spent over 30 years trying to figure out how to do it, and it is not expensive for the amount of impact to just hire out for it. And people are like, why don't you just do it yourself? It's like, I don't know. I do a lot of really cool stuff myself. I do stuff that people can't imagine you could do by yourself. And I can't do certain simple things because of the way I'm wired. Now, it's not that I can't. It's just that it's not a good use of resources. I mean, technically, if your car only has first gear, you can technically go on the highway with it, but it's bad for you. It doesn't work. It's bad for the car. It's bad for traffic. It's bad for everybody around you. And so that's how I feel. There's certain areas of my life that I'm in first gear all the time. And there's certain areas of my life I'm in fifth gear all the time. And I've just had to learn how to be somebody who only operates in the gears that I was created to operate in, and then hires out and trusts people to do what, they say they're going to do and to do what they need to do. And that may be something for you guys to look at too, is just to sit down and go like, am I still in elementary school where they're trying to conform me to being great at something that I just never will be great at? It may be time to give up a little bit. As stupid as that sounds, you may have spent the last 20 years or 15 years or 30 years, not 15, keep at it if you're 15, but trying to figure this one thing out. And you may be like, your answer might be a piece of software, or your answer might be a piece of medication, or your answer may be some deep counseling. Your answer may be the giving up of a behavior that's making that other behavior not possible. But continuing to grind at something that creates anxiety and stress and difficulty, I have been complimented this year more times than I have counted on dependability. And people have come to me and said, wow, like, I wish I was more detail-oriented like you. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I failed out at everything. Like, I spent my entire 7th grade year in math in the hallway. Like, I'm just starting to figure it out. And likewise, there are areas of my life that have slipped because they're not in that kind of supported pipeline of behaviors and support. And like, I completely dropped the ball recently in the last year. Now it's not in areas of my day job. It's not in areas of Renaissance, and it's not in the areas of my family. But things outside of that sometimes that don't make it into the flow, I'll say, man, I would love to do that. I'll commit to that. And man, it is tough to follow through when you're not set up for it. So knowing yourself, knowing your limitations, and just, I don't know how to bring this home. I'm more journaling for myself. Maybe I won't even post this. Maybe this is just for me. But knowing yourself and knowing your limitations, and then making a wise choice of like, has this been solved? You know what I mean? Like, has this been solved already? And we can just, I don't need to fix this. This has already been fixed. And you might go, man, I've been struggling with this for 10 years, but the software is so expensive, or the consultant is so expensive, or whatever. And it's like, yeah, so's 10 years. Right? Like, so's 10 years. That's expensive too. And that's, I guess, my encouragement to you, bringing it home is like, really look at it. What are you held up on? If there's something you know is important and you haven't been able to get it done for a long time, and you've sincerely tried, you've sought help, you've sought guidance, you've read the books, you've done those things, and you stink, like, maybe that's just an indication that the solution that you thought was too expensive is actually a pretty good investment. That's what I'm kind of finding. But I got to know that you sincerely did it, because if it's a character flaw, then the tool or the solution won't actually fix the problem. If you're somebody who wants to be in control of your life all the time, and you don't want anybody else to have any control of you, and you just want to be free to do whatever, then a piece of software is not going to help you. A consultant's not going to help you. Advice isn't going to help you. You're just going to live this hippie life, and it's going to be really hard. So I'm not making space for you, ADD army here, people that understand what I'm saying, to not do it. But my point is, if you're in school, if I was in school, when I was in school, in elementary school, and I struggled and struggled and struggled, didn't know where I was half the time. It was a fog. I was so stressed out. I could never keep track of anything. My parents knew that something was going on, but everybody in the world was telling them, and it was a discipline issue. Now, it partially was, but I was in such a fog. If I had a secretary in 7th grade, I think I'd have gotten all A's. Is that okay? Is it okay to have a secretary in 7th grade? Is that stupid? I mean, think about that for a second. I haven't worked that thought out yet. This is just a fun little thought exercise for me. Can a 7th grader have a secretary? Can a 7th grader then, with the relief of that work, begin to take over their own administrative tasks at some point? But if somebody's like breathing in water in the ocean, like, is it okay to just like not yell at them about learning to swim? Can we just grab them and pull them out of the water and go, let's try something different? So that's I guess what I'm saying is, if you're sitting there and you're just getting your butt kicked, look at what you're getting your butt kicked about, and just decide if finding another solution is the answer. And like I said, it can be short term. Just get out of the water, get a helper, get somebody who can help you. I've talked to businesses in the last 2 weeks who are like, I'm sucking wind, I'm burning through money, I don't have an answer. And I'm like, well, let's grind on it. Let's work on it. And in their mind, it's going to be like this long, arduous. I'm like, no, let's just get you out of drowning for a minute, and then you can take back over. You know what I mean? Like, it can be short term, it can be temporary. So anyway, if you're a parent and you're looking at your kid and they're drowning, figure it out. Go help them out. They're not going to be able to. They obviously want to do better. They're trying. They're not. You don't have a bad kid. You got a kid that's trying. If you're sitting and you're at your startup in your business, you're like, I don't know what to do, then get some help, even in the form of a coffee shop or a discussion, and just start working on inspiration. Someone came to me that's a considerably more talented artist than I am, and he's stuck. And we're going to sit down and we're going to have coffee. We're just going to talk. We're just going to work it out. If you're feeling depressed or you need some help and your mental health you're struggling, spiritually you're struggling, you need to get some help. You need to sit down and you need to talk to somebody. You need to figure out, maybe something is off, but maybe something's busted. Maybe you need something like actually to fix something for a bit. Maybe you need a crutch for a little while. So those are things that I want you guys to think about. And that's not dark. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's normal. It's normal to get in a jam, and it's normal to try to fight your way out of quicksand. And every once in a while, in my case, lots, if I haven't figured it out in 3 days, I know it's going to be a very long struggle. So a lot of times I'll delegate it. I'll buy my way out of the problem. This sounds so stupid, but if I'm in a video game and I love that video game and I'm committed to it, and I put an hour into it and I can't beat the level and I've done everything I can, like, hour 2 is not fun for me. I'm going to buy the upgrade. I'm going to do it. I'm putting the $5 in. I'm in. So anyway, Some of you guys will have pushback on there, like, you can't buy yourself out of your problems. Yes, I know. You're absolutely correct. You can't. That can't be your first instinct. All I'm saying is there are moments in time where you're banging your head against the wall, hoping that the wall gets softer, and it just isn't going to. Your head's going to get softer. So keep that in mind. All right. Well, that was clearly therapy for me and had nothing to do with you. But I'm excited. The process has been really cool. I'm going to work on data management. I'm also going to work on my broadcast gear for out in the field. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this Fuji all the time. Looks like this is 3.2 gigabytes. That's not too bad. But I'm really excited about that. If you're an artist and you've got some ideas, I'm not trying to get free labor out of you. I do plan on hiring some of my friends here very soon. But if you're like, man, I've got something I'd really like to show off, we could collaborate on that. Just reach out to me. I've got musicians reaching out and whatever. This isn't all about money. Obviously, all of us have to be paid for. Our time we have to be wise about what we're doing. But if you just want to collaborate and you're like, man, I would pay to fix something or do something together, and I'm like, oh, I would pay to do it too, then instead of us paying, let's just get together and try something out. But I do, like I said, I'm really excited to support artists and sit down and collaborate and go through some of these things. And I'm excited to write some checks or send some Apple Pays or some Venmos or whatever to some of these talented folks that I'm meeting with. I'm very excited to pay them because it's a really awesome thing when an artist is funded and is free to do the work they love. You get to make something. So few businesses are paying what it's worth to do these things. And the ones that do, you go, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So I'm looking forward to paying for those things. But of course, it's got to fit. It's got to fit. So, well, I appreciate you guys. Again, this is one of those rambles that has a lot to do with how I'm doing, what's going on with me. When you see these episodes, I don't have a segment name for them. You can definitely skip over these. But some of you artists, craftsmen, techies, and thinkers, this is the only one you need to hear because, and then I need to hear from you where you're struggling because the behind the scenes is the whole deal. We're going to have that fifth group of consumers. Sorry for the clicking. I'm doing the pen and banging on here. That fifth group of consumers with those four is going to be important. And we want you guys to enjoy what you're seeing, not to be tedious to listen. We want you to see things that inspire you and you want to buy. But in terms of artists, craftsmen, thinkers, and techies, this is the grind. This is what it is. This was a card table several months ago. I made a commitment not to bleed money out of here, so it's got to produce revenue. And I told it from the beginning, I'm going to wing it. But I'm going to wing it really intentionally. I'm going to have an intentional goal, and I'm going to winging it is working through that as I go. So here's what that is. This is what that looks like. A little bit long, a little bit arduous. The lack of listening is going to go in these episodes. I'm going to shut my doggone mouth when people are on the show. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you for the feedback. It's been a small group that have been really faithful in giving me feedback, and it's been foundational in my change. I've been growing a lot and learning a lot. Right now, what I have is the windows open on the sides, and then I have the Samsung Frame TV in the front. The Philips Hue bulbs are flickering on the mirrorless, and so I have the big Frame TV, which looks like a piece of art. It's really cool. You should look it up. But I have that Frame TV in front of me on a white screen on a loop on YouTube, so that's what's lighting my face. I can show you guys on the YouTube front. When I turn that off, that's how dark this gets. And so, yeah, that's been really cool. But anyway, this is a show about nothing right here, man. The Seinfeld episode. But I'm really glad to chat with you, and I guess I'll talk to you guys. Talk to you soon. I think that's probably enough for today.